Hello, my name is Patrick, and I'm one of the volunteer coordinators from Best Friends Animal Society in Salt Lake City. Welcome to the next video in our engagement series. I hope that you're all doing well and staying safe. I know this period of having to stay home has affected a lot of us in unexpected ways. I, for instance, have kind of doubled down on the fact that I haven't gotten any haircuts in a while and just kind of let my hair go hippie style. I hope you guys are all making better decisions than I am. So last time, in our last video, we talked about how to make these woven fleece dog and cat toys. And for this video, I'm going to stick with the fleece theme and show you how to make a snuffle mat. What is a snuffle mat, you might be asking? Well, I'm glad you asked. This is basically a mat with a bunch of fabric strips tied to it that you can hide treats or food or other smells in and have your pet sniff them out. This sort of mental exercise really helps them exercise those natural behaviors that a lot of pets don't really have to use in their day-to-day life. Sometimes they forget how to do some of the natural behaviors that they should because they're living in the lap of luxury and having things provided for them. So this is making them work for their food a little bit is a great way to help them flex their mental muscles a little bit. This type of toy isn't just for food. You can also use it for smells, and especially for cats. Cats love to interact with new smells. Catnip is an obvious one. There's a lot of other herbs or not necessarily essential oils. Some essential oils can be bad for cats, but things like mint is something I've seen cats really respond well to. You don't have to use an essential oil. You can use even just some diluted minty mouthwash. Put that on there, and it's a great surface for the cats to really rub on and roll on and get their claws into. So it can be used in a variety of ways. So how do we make a snuffle mat? The first thing you're going to need is your base. I have two fairly large dogs, so I'm using a pretty heavy-duty base. This is an anti-slip, anti-fatigue mat that I got at a hardware store. It comes in big, sort of 3-foot by 3-foot sections. It was about $25 for that size. And each section, it's kind of divided up into 1-foot squares, which makes a really good size for a snuffle mat. So in order to cut this, if you're using this heavy-duty stuff, it can be a little difficult to work with. So you want to sort of fold it along that seam and then take a nice sharp knife and just kind of, you don't want to saw all the way through. You just want to score right along that seam while it's folded, and do that a few times, just cutting a little bit each time. And once you get about halfway through, that rubber is going to start to kind of spring apart. That way you don't have to risk your fingers by sawing away at this heavy rubber. Go to the other side and do a couple. There we go, it's starting to come apart. Once you get there, it'll just kind of rip in half. So this is a good size for your mat, but you don't have to use this heavy-duty stuff. I've seen these made with sink mats that have a bunch of holes in them, or bathtub mats. You could even make one out of wood if you're good at carpentry sort of stuff. Anything that's got that repeating pattern of a whole bunch of regular holes is going to make a good snuffle mat. So the only other material you need for this is your fleece. Now we talked about fleece in the last video and how it's a good material to make dog and cat toys because it's durable, it's washable, and it doesn't tend to come apart in strings. Those long stringy pieces can tend to cause problems if your pet swallows them. So that's what makes fleece a pretty good material to use. In order to make these mats, you can buy these fleece strips at any fabric store. I actually found one that was a no-sew blanket kit. It comes with 2 big pieces of fleece and in complementary colors, so that's convenient. But you can buy whatever colors you like at any fabric store. You are going to need quite a bit of fleece for this project. A mat this size is going to use about 112 strips, so lots of fleece, and each one is going to be about 1 inch by, you can do about 8 to 12 inches in length. The longer the strips, the deeper the mat on your snuffle mat is going to be. So if your dog is an old pro at solving food puzzles, then using longer strips is going to make it a little bit more of a challenge. If this is the first time they've really had to think about how to get their food, you might want to use shorter strips to make it a little easier, keep them from getting frustrated. So in order to make all these strips, the way I liked to do it was I cut them all into long individual strips, and then you can just cut a little piece of cardboard that is the length that you want it to be, and then wrap your long strip around it. Then instead of cutting a bunch of individual strips, you can just make 2 cuts and get them all done at once. So actually making the mat is fairly straightforward. You're just gonna, let me put my camera down here. You're just gonna take each strip, go through one hole, through the next hole, and tie a knot. One thing I do also want to point out is if you worked with fleece for our last video and made those dog toys, you'll notice it's kind of a directional material. So if you cut the strips in one direction, they're pretty rigid and don't really stretch. If you cut them in the other direction, they tend to be a bit more flexible. For this project, you want to do it where it's a little more rigid. That's going to make it easier to tie each strip. So you do each hole. You're basically going in between every individual hole. And the way I found works easiest, instead of doing all of the rows and then all of the columns, if you complete one row, say, imagine that I finished all of this, then you take your complementary color and you go to the column. Start in the same hole you started with and go this direction. So that way, from the other side, you can see you go across the row, and then you can do each of these on a column in order to fill out the rest of your mat. So it's not going to look like much until you really get a lot of these tied, but eventually it will start looking a bit more like this. So it's pretty much that simple. It takes a little more time than I'm showing you right here. I'm not going to go through and tie the whole thing with you watching. So we're going to get right to the most exciting part of making any toy, and that's the demonstration. I'm going to try to get my, my lovely assistant Badger to come over. There he comes. So I'm just going to take a little bit of the food and put it in there and kind of rub it down so that it's all getting down in between those fabric strips. You can even kind of shake it down in there. And let's see how Badger does. I'm going handheld for a second here. Now Badger's pretty good at this game. This isn't his first time. You can see, compared to just eating his food out of a bowl, this is going to take a little more time, make him kind of hunt for it, make him work for it. And in general, it's going to be really good for your dog's mental well-being. Alright. Well, thank you for joining me for this. I hope you're all doing well. I hope your dogs enjoy your Snuffle Mats. So have a great day.